Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our January 13th, 2026 regular board meeting of directors. Thank you to those attending our meeting in person, joining us by Zoom, and those staying informed by watching our recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the back of the boardroom on the table to my left and turn it in to our board secretary, Kim Coven, whose seat is at the end of the table, also on my left. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion of our agenda. Before we start tonight's agenda, I want to take a moment and introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Horn Frazier, Eastham, and Williams. I'm President Malone. To my left, we have Vice President Abraham, Directors Finch, Lingo, and Board Secretary Coven. And first item on the agenda is approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
I move.
Second.
Board Secretary Cohen, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
It should pop up with your.
You should.
Dr. Aaron, you're a yes, okay.
I voted.
How would you like to vote, Director Horn Frazier? Okay. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next, we will move to the public forum part of our agenda, and first item is the student representative updates, and we will start tonight off with Tate High and their video update.
This is Jenna, Isaiah, Bree, and Anaya from Tate Media Production Team. It was a fast start to the second trimester during the few weeks before winter break. The week before break, we had the holiday store where many students got to get gifts for their families. It was so fun.
Students and staff played each other in volleyball and kickball before break. It was a fun few class periods.
Student council packed and passed out food bags to send home over winter break.
Students volunteered at the free lunch program and served food.
Parent-teacher conferences are coming up next week.
Second trimester feels like a long trimester, but we are excited to get through the next few weeks.
Toodles!
And following Tate, we will have Liberty High, John and Mia.
So use this one. Hi. Hello, we hope everyone's doing well.
Over the past month, Liberty students have been very busy sleeping. The 2-week winter break gave students a wonderful opportunity to recharge and relax after months of hard work.
As for our general update, Kirkwood Workplace Learning Connections will begin accepting summer internship applications that offer an amazing opportunity for students to explore a career cost-free. I personally had the pleasure of interning at an architecture firm in Iowa City, and it gave me firsthand experience, and it allowed me to see how architecture functions beyond the classroom.
The National Honor Society chapter at Liberty raised nearly $2,000 for the North Liberty Community Food Pantry following its coin drive.
Liberty will be hosting its very first Frozen Film Fest on Sunday, January 18th, with a special guest, Elsa, played by one of our students at Liberty. As for sports, Liberty High dance team performed at the state dance competition in Des Moines. The team earned second place finish in the Class 12 Pom, fourth in the Class 6 Jazz, and senior Allie Farrell also received an 8th place in Class 5 solos. For performing arts, Liberty's Color Guard performed at the Winter Guard State Competition, and following months of hard work, earned a Division I ranking, which is the highest rating possible. Choirs for a Cause is an annual winter event where high school show choirs perform to raise funds for a local nonprofit. Prep and varsity show choirs from City, Liberty, and West performed at Liberty's Auditorium on Wednesday, January 7th.
Liberty's Winter Band concert this month will feature 3 bands. 5 or so years ago, Liberty had only 1 concert band, and over these years, Liberty's band program has greatly grown to 3 bands full of students. In just 10 days, the Liberty Jazz Bands will be heading to the Simpson Jazz Festival. That's going to be very fun. That's all.
And that's what we have for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from City High, Alma, and Tobiah.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I am very, very excited for our first announcement because it involves me. City High Debate went to the IHSSA State Debate Tournament this weekend, and we took home the trophy in the policy division. I actually ended up debating Eddie, the West High rep who is not here, twice. It was at this point that I was going to turn around and thank him for 2 fun debates, but as he is not here, I will just tell you that I am up 2-0 against him.
4th Ave Show Choir competed at Xavier and won the overall competition, the best crew, best band, best vocals, and best choreography. So they're very proud of that competition performance.
And City High wrestler Shauna Emanuel won a women's wrestling tournament in Anamosa.
The Student Senate has our hunger drive coming up this weekend. We'll be at First Ave in North Dodge from 9 to 5 collecting food donations. We hope to see all of you there.
Speaking of donations, City High Student Senate will be giving out about 35 free senior yearbooks for students this year. I'm very excited about it, both because it's a big step for accessibility and because I've been sending emails about it for months.
City High Bowling won the pin from West High at the recent tournament. I'm not quite sure what that is, but it sounds pretty cool.
It's a traveling trophy, I think.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
Good job, City High Bowling. Our Model UN Club has finally been given a Security Council country by UNI. If you don't know about Model UN, that may not sound significant, but it basically indicates that we're finally being entrusted with the big boy toys, so it's very exciting.
City High hosted a large-scale robotics competition that went very well, and they were happy that they get to move forward with their season.
City High Woodshop is using our brand new industrial tech lab to make boards for cornhole. The division of whether it is called cornhole for bags is tearing the student body apart.
Our girls basketball team is ranked in the top 10 and they had a great season.
Other debate news, City High is finally going to be hosting the Cross River Classic Tournament at City High this year. We're very excited to have all of the debaters from out of state.
We have class registration opening soon. We're excited to offer 2 new AP classes, AP Business and AP Cybersecurity. I know there are lots of seniors that think these classes sound really exciting and maybe wish they could have gotten to take them. And also our jazz bands will be going to Simpson College as well, Jazz Ensemble and Jazz Lab.
Thank you.
Thank you. And since West High representatives are not here, we'll move on to the ICEA update from President Brady Shutt.
Hi, Brady Shutt for the Iowa City Education Association. Students are always fantastic, and I don't want to debate you. I'm sure it would be a losing proposition for me. So President Malone, Vice President Abraham, Director, Superintendent Degner. The legislative session has begun. As we know, I think some of us are live streaming and watching the condition of the state address as we're here at this meeting. I urge all of us to remain engaged and informed and to reach out to our friends and family and legislators, not just here in Johnson County, but all across the state as the session moves forward. You know, I teach politics, and I know politics can be divisive, and sometimes there's a good reason for that. I also know that it's true, and I do believe we are capable of solving hard problems when we work together. So I urge the legislators to have that same spirit, and as we do our engagement, that we also have that spirit. I'd like to extend on that note an invitation to all of us to go to the League of Women Voters of Johnson County Forum on Education. It's Saturday, January 24th at the Iowa City Senior Center starting at 9:30 a.m. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have community comment. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you plan to speak about. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. Speakers who make comments are reminded that they are responsible for their own statements and may be subject to legal action for those which include hate speech and that are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by all the stated time limits. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items will take place at the beginning of the meeting and will be limited to 4 minutes per speaker and 5 minutes for speakers who has the assistance of an interpreter. Speaker's time limit will be displayed on an iPad on the ledge in front of Board Secretary Ms. Colvin, and an alarm will sound once the speaker's time has expired. The initial community comment period will be limited to an hour, and remaining comment, to the extent necessary, will take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in any discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. Any individual who does not abide by these rules or otherwise disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave and/or referred to law enforcement. And our first speaker for tonight is John Lohman.
Okay, my name is John Lohman. I live in North Liberty. My wife, Aspen Lohman, is a first grade teacher who is currently on leave for being assaulted at Coralville Central Elementary School by the same student twice in December of 2024 and another attempted assault last February by the same student. I'm here today to comment on behalf of my wife on the policy revisions to better define physical aggression of students towards staff and ask the bigger question, how did we get to this point? I'll remind you that the Iowa General Assembly finds and declares that the instructional staffs of Iowa's public schools have the right to be safe and secure at school. But that hasn't been the case in the Iowa City School District. It wasn't until my wife had the courage to talk about her assaults and the resulting trauma in such a public way that the superintendent and you, the school board, decided to do anything. Why is that? We are glad changes are starting to take place, but these long overdue policy changes that you are considering are at the expense of my wife's mental and physical health. Did you not know what was happening in our schools? Why not? Let me ask you this. Could you freely visit a school, or did you need to go through the administration before visiting? Why do you think that was the case? The superintendent and his administration have known about the level of violence that's been happening in our schools for years, but they chose not to do anything, even try to sweep the issue under the rug and keep the board and the public in the dark. Why isn't the district being upfront with the public about OSHA violations? In 2019, OSHA fined the school district for violating state law by failing to protect teachers at Penn Elementary School from violent student outbursts. Another similar OSHA violation was imposed at the James Van Allen Elementary School for the 23-24 school year. Were those OSHA violations not enough of a wake-up call for the superintendent and the school board? In addition to potentially violating state law, Superintendent Matt Degner and Coralville Central Principal Andy Gann may have violated the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners Code of Conduct and Ethics Standard 6, which determines that they must protect the safety of students and staff. As several of you mentioned in a previous board meeting, you have heard that teacher violence has been a bigger issue in the district, but it hasn't been fully reported. Why is that? We believe that teachers haven't been fully reporting the incidents of violence in the past because they either felt nothing was going to happen, so why report it in the first place, or there was even pressure by the district to keep the real level of violence hidden. And in the rare cases where teachers did tell about their assaults and attacks, including my wife, there was a galling lack of compassion and empathy by the district. All of this points to a clear lack of leadership and trust in the superintendent. When are you going to hold the superintendent accountable for failing to protect teachers? Getting better data and better processes in place to help protect teachers is a step in the right direction. But the board needs to ask itself, how did we get here? Why did it take so long? And does the current superintendent have the trust and respect from teachers across the district to better protect them going forward? We are asking the school board to do more to protect teachers so they don't need to go through what my wife continues to suffer through. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the public hearing for the Interstate Light and Power Company real property easement.
Now, now is the time and place for the public hearing on the Interstate Power and Light Company real property easement. Notice of the public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on December 10th, 2025. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
We will close that public hearing. Before we get to tonight's consent agenda, were there any questions or comments from those who reviewed the bills for this cycle? All right. I had one. I think it was just for my own edification of finding out how much one of our lawnmowers costs and like the life cycle of that. So thank you to our business office for providing that. I appreciate that. Hearing none, are there any items directors want to pull from tonight's consent agenda?
I'd like to pull item 12.
Okay, accounts payable and Forever Green Road Extension. Anything else? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve minus those two items?
So moved.
Second.
Board Secretary, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open.
Came out voting yes.
Thank you, Director Easom. Dr. Horn Fraser?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. That takes us to the items pulled from tonight. Item number 5, accounts payable items.
I pulled item 12.
I thought it was 5 and 12. I'm sorry.
No, just 5,
Okay,
just 12.
just item 12 then.
Yeah, I sent an email, director inquiry, before the meeting tonight, just because I've gotten some questions from the community about the extension of the Forever Green Road. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to provide some information about the pedestrian detour, some safety information, and what the timeline is going to be for that construction.
Yeah, thanks, Director Finch. I shared back an email with the board and for the community's purposes here tonight. We work collaboratively with the City of North Liberty and with the City of Coralville on that project to extend Forever Green Road. We've been in touch with them. We'll continue to be in touch with them, similar to how when we have different construction projects throughout the district that impact the flow of our students to and from school. We work on those pedestrian detours and try to, of course, keep appropriate signage in place and advance communicate that to our families through our principals and building leaders. So we'll continue that with this project. The closer we get to the construction of that, we know that that's a busy area and some flow and some neighbors may have some concerns about what that traffic flow is also going to look like. And so the safety of our kids and our families and then also how that's going to impact the neighborhood are always those pieces we try to balance as we work through those projects. So there's, like I said, some more specifics I provided to you guys. We'd be happy to come back and provide any specifics, but we'll really, again, communicate that through the buildings to those affected constituents, and then we'll rely on the cities with the affected neighbors too, and how we get them that information.
Thank you. And it sounds like it starts in May. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, May is the target date for the initial part of that easement work.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve item 12.
Second.
Right. Board Secretary Cohen, ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
And Board Secretary Coven, at first motion, would you pull
So we
five?
need to approve. Yeah,
Okay,
we need to
thank
approve the
you.
accounts payable. Thank
So, I accidentally pulled item number 5. I did not have questions.
I move that we approve
Thank
item
you.
5.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Board Secretary Coven.
Online voting is open. Director Eastham, how would you like, oh, you got it. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up, our committee report is the Education Committee report. And still, we have Director Eastham as chair. Do you want to report out?
I could just make a few comments. The Education Committee did meet recently, and for the purpose of reviewing the Iowa School Performance Profile that applies, as it applies to the district. And I'm going to ask the superintendent if he would be willing to perhaps summarize that session, since he is much more in tune with the performance profile issues than I am, even still confused at these moments about what the state is actually doing in terms of requiring the kinds of reports that they're involved in right now.
Sure, thanks, Director Eastham. So the state of Iowa has started with district performance profiles, similar to how we've had the building performance profiles, where each of our schools were identified with a certain level based on a number of metrics, including growth, things like graduation rate, attendance, post-secondary readiness opportunities. And so we had reviewed those results at that Education Committee meeting. I think some of the controversial aspects of it are districts and buildings that are dropped significant levels because of their subgroup performance, and knowing how big or large or small that may be on either certain campuses or certain districts across the state. But we spent some time walking through where the district performed in that, and then, of course, had some good conversation about areas of improvement and areas of success. And so that'll be a continued focus for us, just like it is with our buildings, about different goals that we set and ways we monitor achievement through those. So it was a good conversation, and something we'll look forward to coming back again.
Great.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent Degner. And if other board members might have comments they want to make too, as a result of that that information review.
Thank you. And next up was policy review. Were there any, I know we haven't had a policy and governance meeting, but it doesn't look like we have anything to discuss there. Director Williams?
No, that's correct.
Okay. And that takes us to tonight's presentations, which on my agenda it says Hanover Community Engagement Project. Is that the first one?
Yeah, so we have the folks from Hanover that are on the phone line with us tonight. Kim's going to try to get them connected, and I'll kind of fill some space and introduce them. So I sent you guys through email the survey that'll be distributed on the 19th to the community. We felt like this was a good time to get some feedback from our community around things that they find successful in the district, reasons they choose the district to send their students, and then also areas we can continue to look at to improve. And also, if we were to get into some tight fiscal situation in the future, how would we prioritize some of our investments into our students? And so Hanover's been a great partner. We have a yearly agreement with them. They do research studies for the district, and then they also have the ability to put together some feedback tools for us. And so part of the focus of the conversation tonight is really around the survey instrument that'll be distributed, like I said, to the community, but then also to introduce you to the idea of potentially some focus groups as a follow-up, and to better understand the board's interest in that moving forward. As we learn some information through those surveys, there may be a good opportunity for us to consider bringing in and getting some personal voice to some of those opportunities for us as well. So with that, I'll kind of welcome Jenny to jump in here, and then she can introduce team members that are with her and walk you guys through how they went about creating the survey. And apologies that we don't have the slides on. We will get those attached. We just didn't get those attached to the agenda, but we'll retroactively do that.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we got you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, and hello to the governing board. Thank you so much for inviting Hanover Research to present and share more about our partnership with Iowa City Community School District. Kim, if you're able to share, we can move on to slide 2, as I want to share a little bit of background about Hanover itself. Hanover is a research and analytics firm, and we work closely with district leadership to evaluate best practices and conduct innovative research, which will support leadership with fundamental perception data from your greater community. The Hanover team is comprised of myself. Jenny Filpo. I'm the relationship director, ensuring the success of our partnership while also managing all of the resources that are available to the district. Dr. Naomi Brown serves as your content director, managing all the research and project timelines, and she'll be talking through the upcoming survey at a high level momentarily. We also have senior members of our content team joining, Dr. Sean Watkins, along with our senior managing director, Dr. Marian Ueda. And finally, a dedicated member from our survey team, Dr. Dara Praise, is joining us for a more in-depth discussion on the survey and any Q&A at the end of our presentation. As for our agenda this evening, we'd like to begin by giving you a brief overview of the future survey we'll be administering, and then turn your attention to our future recommendations. Hanover has created a rich history with Iowa City Community School District, implementing research summaries, previous surveys, various analyses, and several evaluations to ensure strategic alignment. With all of this in mind, I'd like to hand you over to Naomi as we turn our focus to the impactful work about to commence and the actionable recommendations outlined from the data thus far. Kim, would you mind moving to slide 3? And Naomi, whenever you're ready.
Hi, great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. We're excited to be partnering with the district in its commitment to making data-driven decisions that reflect the priorities of students, families, and staff. So I'll provide a bit of an overview of our work at a high level and also talk about the survey at a high level. Our work together is really focused on understanding what matters most to the community and how students, families, and staff experience their time in the district. So to do this, we're using a mixed methodological approach to create a comprehensive picture of community needs and expectations that's centered around 3 overarching research questions. So the first is to explore key priorities and perceptions of community members' experiences in the district. The second is to examine how students, families, and staff view the effectiveness of current programs and initiatives. And third, to uncover what aspects of student and family experiences are most valued and where there are opportunities for improvement. And so by gathering these insights, we aim to support the district in aligning strategic planning with community priorities, to strengthen community engagement through a survey and follow-up community conversations, to enhance academic and extracurricular offerings by identifying areas of strength and growth, and to optimize budgetary decisions based on data that identifies what really matters most to the community. And then if you could move to the next slide, the program and community input survey is a key component of this approach. And it will gather feedback from students in grades 6 through 12, parents and caregivers, and staff. And the survey focuses on several areas, including overall perceptions of the district, academic factors, co- and extracurricular opportunities, culture and environment, school safety, and budgetary priorities. And our next steps are, we'll first field the survey, and then once the survey closes, Hanover will clean and analyze the data to synthesize key themes and provide actionable recommendations to guide the district in making strategic decisions. And the survey also lays the groundwork for deeper community conversations through qualitative research, such as in-depth interviews or focus groups, to really ensure that future engagement builds on what we learned from the survey. So really making sure that both pieces are really interconnected. And so we're excited to support the district in this important work, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dara Prace, who will provide a bit more detail about this survey.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Awesome. So using the research questions and outcomes that Dr. Brown just mentioned as the guide, the Program and Community Input Survey was designed through a collaborative and iterative process between Hanover's survey research specialists and the ICCSD staff. The design is rooted in best practices in survey design, Hanover's extensive K-12 survey research experience and expertise, and ICCSD's deep knowledge of the community. The survey is intended for students in grades 6 through 12, for parents or caregivers, and for staff members, with questions written to support comparisons of the same questions across these responded groups. When we get to the portion where you have additional questions, we are eager to answer any of those that you may have. I will turn it over to our next team member.
Thanks, Dara. Dara asked if you can all hear me, but I'm trusting you can. But like Dara and Naomi mentioned, we highly recommend and encourage when we are doing something of this nature where you are attempting to really solicit community involvement. A survey is only going to give you, it will give you breadth of and a larger scope in terms of end size and sample size there. But it might not give you all of the how and the why behind some of those survey responses. So as you see on the last slide, we highly encourage and recommend follow-up qualitative work. With priorities and initiatives that are this large scale, we recommend in-person or virtual focus groups that are really meant to dig deeper into those survey responses. So really guiding and delving deeper into particular stakeholder, audience, community members' responses, really trying to understand the picture and the whole story and providing a little bit more nuance and context around the survey responses. So the focus groups are really meant to gather more around additional perceptions related to the plans, the policies, or your initiatives, what specific factors influence their perceptions and why that is. Are there specific barriers, challenges in any of the processes and any pieces where they feel they have unmet needs among the different groups in your community? And in particular, any specific recommendations that they would bring to the table. So this is really around problem solving and solution finding and incorporating those diverse perspectives and voices into the solution altogether. So we highly encourage that, and we also think that it's a really important aspect towards the end of really kind of mixing both of the methods, right? The survey data along with the qualitative data to help inform your messaging and next steps in terms of communication to the broader community partners. So I'll turn it over to Jenny and to all of you if you have any specific follow-up questions for the team.
Yes, thank you. As Miriam said, we would be happy to answer any questions that the board or community members might have.
Thank you for that presentation. Directors, are there questions?
President Malone, I might ask the presenters to elaborate a little bit more about how they're going to obtain participation by the many diverse groups that are part of the this district.
Were you
I'm sorry, would you mind repeating that question?
Oh, I'm sorry. How can you elaborate at greater length about how your methods will obtain participation from the many diverse groups that are a part of this school district?
Okay, Charlie, you can correct. I'm sitting next to it. This is Director Lingo, and I'm going to try my best to reiterate what Director Eastham is asking, and that is, how are you planning to engage other groups that may come from, per se, marginalized communities and other communities than the typical groups that respond to surveys? Is that kind of what you're asking, Charlie?
That's good. Thank you very much.
That's a really good question, and I can go ahead and answer that. So when we design the survey, we ensure that we are looking at a variety of different indicators or screeners so that we understand who are the different respondents. And that's what sends people down the correct path. So students are seeing questions that are applicable and appropriately worded for them, likewise for parents as well as staff. We use that information when the survey is in the field to also monitor response rates. We are not looking at what the specific answers are to specific questions. What we are looking at is to support the district in ensuring that there is coverage and representation across schools, grade levels, and different roles within the district. And those are already built into the survey. One of the other things that we have also built into the survey is the ability for people to self-select if they would be interested in ongoing research with the district, whether that is qualitative, whether that is something a little bit more in-depth like an interview. We have also added that in there. At the time in which we close out the survey, we will provide that different information. So throughout the survey, we will be in contact with district staff, letting them know, hey, it might make sense to just remind staff at Site A or some parents at Site B to help increase those numbers across those different components. The goal would be to have to have all this information so that the district can then reach out to individuals at the district, whether that is through programs or at sites, to really make sure that we can get those responses. And because we are going to be utilizing that for monitoring, that will help provide a rather robust contact list of individuals that would be willing to participate. We also make it very clear in that signing up for participating in the focus groups that they're signing up, or focus groups qualitative, any ongoing qualitative work. We make it very clear that their responses in the previous part of the survey are not connected. So in that way, we are still able to protect and maintain anonymity and privacy while also providing some of those different indicators that would help create a nice, cultivated, rounded list.
I just
Does that
have
help?
oh, I'm sorry, were you still answering?
Nope.
Okay, I just have a follow-up question. Will the survey be sent out in various languages that our families actually speak?
Yes, the survey has been translated into several languages. I can pull that up for you, but if I am not mistaken, it is the top 5 languages or so that are spoken in the district.
Thank you.
We utilize the survey instrument, so also if it is taken in a Chrome browser and a respondent is familiar with translating information via a Chrome browser, then they can translate the survey into any of the languages that are available in that Chrome browser, in addition to the languages that are already built in.
And to follow up with President Malone's question, will you conduct focus groups in such a way that interpretation is available during the focus group session?
Question is.
Yeah, so
Sorry, go ahead.
is the question around interpretation and languages, right?
Yes, during focus groups.
Yes, okay, I will jump in. Yes, so when we're thinking about the qualitative pieces, it's kind of a mix of different recruitment strategies and sampling and screening techniques to get the right people in the door, right? Because certain people are going to want to participate. We want to make sure that we're sampling diverse voices and including them in that process. So we work with the district to make sure we understand the different languages, the components that are there that we need to address, and be working with the district to think through those translations and interpretation on site if we're doing them on site or virtually. I think the other piece that I would add here is that if we are doing them in person, it's really going out to the community to make sure that we are bringing the focus groups to them, local areas, that we might have more representation. It's also thinking with the district around incentives. So incentives, timing, if it's something that, we want to make sure that it's within the school, that they have some childcare, if the parents are coming, the families are coming in, that there's food offered. So we would work closely with our district point of contact to ensure that we're recruiting effectively, the communication's going out effectively, that there are ways to provide interpretation, and that we're being a little bit more deliberate with sampling and screening.
Thank you very much.
And I had a question that's very closely related. You just answered the second part of the question I was going to ask. So the one remaining is more about incentivizing people to respond to the survey. I think you covered how to recruit and incentivize people to participate in the focus groups, but you'll be monitoring responses and for representation. So I assume that there are some things that you're thinking about too with helping to encourage people to respond to the survey part, but I'm just curious in a little bit more about that.
So I can jump in here. This is Naomi, and that's something that we are happy to work with the district to incentivize. As Sarah had mentioned, we worked really closely on crafting the language for the survey to really encourage opportunity to share voice, opportunity to share perspectives, and so that's one way. But we're happy to work with you in thinking about how to design or develop incentives, and to support and help with communication tactics, language, outreach language, and things like that.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Director Finch. I don't have any expertise in designing surveys, so I'm going to rely on you. But I just had a question because I do want to make sure that we're getting the information that we want to get from this. And so you do have some questions here, you know, choosing like up to 5 options, all equal weighted, and some of these items could be competing sort types of interest. And so I just wondered if you could answer for me, like, you know, what do you ever do a question where you rank choice these types of priorities, or can you explain that to us, where choosing 5 rather than just ranking them?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
What we have found is that the interpretation in terms of ranking questions, especially when ranking items, especially when there are a lot of items, can be a challenge to interpret. Sometimes if there are fewer items and you're asking them to rank them, they may not be those that are a priority for them, and they're just ranking them simply because, well, on the lower end of my priority list, they're there. So in choosing the 5, we have really consistently good outcomes in those types of responses in being able to highlight the top items that are coming across from respondents throughout the school district. There are always that option where if we need to even narrow it down more, we do have options, which would be a follow-on question of, okay, you selected these, which would be your top. But in this design, just given the length and the context and the different respondent groups, making it accessible, we elected to just go with the pick your top 5 to be able to give a broader source of answers, so that we know that they are those top priorities.
Thank you for explaining that.
So, I'm Director Linko, and I have a question on, starting with questions 12 and 13, I want to just try to figure out if I'm reading this correctly. In questions 12 and 13, there's some things on the high schools and middle schools. So, for example, availability of advanced placement courses. It says display if school level equals high. If I'm a parent and I have clicked that I'm an elementary parent, is that an option for me?
You would not see that question, no. That's a really great point. That question level, the level is based on the school that the respondents select, and that's how those questions go. The reasoning behind that can be also that an elementary parent is not going to be experiencing the need for those questions as in a shorter amount of time, and things may end up changing. So that's the other thing, is that in terms of this survey, while we plan on all surveys to be longitudinal, so this was designed so that it could be administered year after year after year, we also know that sometimes priorities change. So there is some flexibility that if in 2 years a different priority shifts or there's a different name for a program, we can change that. But that's why we kind of constrain it to those, to what would be most applicable for the year's survey.
That's fair, but I'm a parent of an elementary school student. I know of other parents of elementary school students that we are already thinking about high schools. I think of one of the principals that I talked to in particular, Mitch Gross, who talks about it, parents choosing their elementary schools for their pathway to that high school. And if, like, quality of high school education is a large component of what a lot of elementary parents, myself included, pick this district for. And I mean, yeah, there's ebbs and flows, but I can tell you that me looking at the survey, I would be pretty frustrated not being able to reflect upon having high school as an option on there. Because it's, when it comes down to it, when we make these, if we have to make decisions down the road, there are things that could affect high schools, could affect elementary schools. They live within the same realm because they all come from the same pot in the end. So.
Yeah, and I will jump in as a parent also of an elementary student, so I completely understand where you're coming from, because I think we do have perspectives on what's happening in high schools. I will say that that can be targeted, though, and you might get better data through the qualitative piece, right? If we had a group, a focus group specifically with elementary school parents, and we knew what the data from the survey said, that would be an opportunity to dig in deeper through the qualitative lens and actually get more in terms of recommendations and insights and kind of preferences based on some of those pathways. So that's an area where we can explore through the qualitative piece.
So this is Director Williams. I actually agree with Director Lingo. I'm a parent of a middle school and an elementary school parent, and I still think there's a lot of value in asking our parents of younger kids that question, but then maybe disaggregating out the data when we see the total responses. Like, what do our elementary school parents think is important, you know, as they look to the future? What do our high school parents think is important now that they're in the midst of it? I mean, do we have to limit that question to only parents of high school students?
I think it's our survey, so I think if that's some feedback you guys have for us, I definitely think that's something we can adjust, and that's a feedback point we can certainly follow up with the Hanover team on this week. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason we can't adjust anything. It's just going to be a matter of the timeline related to the launch. So any of the feedback that you're providing, we're happy to be able to pull up and kind of think through. The one thing we're going to have to keep in mind just with any of the revisions is making sure that we're still adhering to some sort of, to a reasonable length. So we don't want to have any survey fatigue throughout the process. So.
Additional questions or comments from the board? All right. I think that concludes the presentation. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting us to speak. We really appreciate it. And should other questions arise, please don't hesitate to let the leadership team know. We would be happy to address further questions at any point.
Great.
So thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next up,
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Next up, we will move to the District Career Academic Plan. Superintendent Degner.
Yes, thanks, President Malone. So I'll fill the time while they walk to the podium here. We have Carmen, Dom, and Troy with us this evening to present to you the District Career and Academic Plan. This is an annual presentation we deliver to you Would just want to give a shout out to the team here about some of the work they've done around district pathways. We have a ribbon cutting this Thursday to kind of highlight some of a piece of that work with some different pathways that have been also a part of this conversation. But overall, I would just thank Carmen a lot for her work in being able to display these pathways in a digestible format for our students. We're entering the time of year where kids are going to be signing up for courses. We know that those pathways are critical in terms of our post-secondary readiness portion of the Iowa School Performance Profile that we touched on earlier. And so big kudos to her and the team for the work they've done to continue our progress in this area.
Thank you so much. So all of you know me, so I want to introduce myself, but I'll let Dom introduce himself and Troy.
Good evening, board directors. My name is Dominic Audi. I'm post-secondary readiness specialist with the district, and I also handle our Carl Perkins funds.
Troy Bergman, counselor at Liberty High School and the content lead for secondary school counselors.
I told Dom and Troy this is their first presentation to the board that you guys are going to be nice to them, so we'll make sure it goes well when it comes to questions. So thank you so much for having us here today. Our goal is just to talk a little bit about our annual, for 2025, our district career and academic plan. We'll be very brief, just give you a quick overview of what our DCAP plan is for this past year, the future ready components that make up our DCAP plan, and then also share a little bit about the CFI immersive experiences that are here at the district office that supports our district career and academic plan for all of our students. And so, you all know this is one of those presentations we do every year. Part of our presentation does factor into our scoring for the district for our plan, and so Don will talk a little bit about our scores today. If you click on that link, you will have access to this. You'll be able to see what our plan was that we submitted to Grantwood AAA for approval. We use a state-approved rubric for this, and so that link would take you to all the components that are part of that. As you know, our district career and academic plan requires us to make sure that all of our students from 8th grade through 12th grade have an individual career and academic plan. So they have their 4-year of high school planned out with thoughts in place around their post-secondary goals. And so jobs, careers, college experiences, and what they're looking for after high school. We have 5 components that are part of our DCAP plan. This is how we're graded, and so these are factored into our score around self-understanding, making sure students have some time to reflect on those career experiences they have, career information we provide our students, career exploration opportunities we provide for students, the post-secondary exploration opportunities we provide for students, and then also career and post-secondary decision opportunities that students have. I'm gonna let Dom talk a little bit about our scoring and how we got to the score that we got this year.
Thanks, Carmen. So as Carmen said, we used, Grant Wood did the evaluation for us, and they used the state-approved rubric. And as you can see, our score for this year was 22 out of 36. And 8 of the 12 components scored at an advanced level.
32.
Right, so what I meant is in the rubric there are 12 components. 8 of the components scored 3 out of 3, and 4 of the components scored 2. So that gave us a score of 32 in total. And so what this does is it provides us, for us, it provides us a roadmap in terms of where we need to go in terms of the proficient scores, the scores that are 2s. One nice proud moment for us was seeing, if you squint really hard and look at the top right, you'll see the Grant Wood area AEA, the region's average school district scores. And you can see that we were quite a bit above most school districts there. So, great. So what does a advanced DCAP look like? Well, these are all our strengths, all our strong components, and really one of the comments that was repeated over and over in the evaluation was that there appears the strong scaffolding of our academics and our career exploration across the district, across grades, and that it's very clear that our DCAP was clearly prioritized, and we had a strong team, and also a strong board for looking at this. So these were our strengths. We had strong stakeholder involvement. Overall implementation was excellent. Very strong scores in our FAFSA advisement that involved a lot of community input and family communication. So how do we get better? Because Carmen's goal and our goal is to get a 36 next year. And so our four goals taken from analyzing this was to make sure that we increase student reflection. So after we do those surveys, after the career exploration events, analyze and have those students, after every single career exploration event, have students provide, analyze and reflect. But then also incorporate adults, have some meaningful conversations with those kids so that it's just not just paperwork. We've been working hard over the last 2 years, increasing our post-secondary readiness scores and integrating work-based learning into our classrooms, and then broaden beyond Zello. Zello is our career information system that we use to do a lot of our career inventories. We want to try to branch out and use some other techniques with that. So.
All right, so our work in progress for this year, as you can see, recent legislation, House File 316, has now expanded. So instead of just focusing from 8th graders through 12th graders, now we're extending now to 5th graders. And so like Dom said, I always strive for better. So our goal is now to push it to 3rd graders instead of 5th graders and start building up from 3rd graders to make sure our students have more accurate information around career opportunities so that when they do get to 8th grade and they're able to plan their ICAP and their 4-year plan for high school, they have a lot of information about what their choices are. And so that also helps us to decide about what we want to do for the immersive experiences we provide for students here at the Center for Innovation. Understand that we're working with students through elementary. It also helps to inform some of those career academies. So as Dom said, Zello is our source of information. Our students complete that process, and it helps us determine what are the high careers that pop up for students. And so those will help us inform what are some of those academies we want to provide for students to have access here at the Center for Innovation. Dominic has been doing a lot of work around our industry recognized credentials, and so that is part of our school performance profiles. And so he's been doing a lot of background, making sure that we provide opportunities for our students to receive those industry recognized credentials in as many areas as possible. So those are things that we have in place for this year and moving forward. So thinking about some of those CFI immersive experiences, recently the National Career Clusters Framework has been updated so it's more student friendly for most of those programs that are for K-12. And so they're now centered around these wonderful languages or categories that really support students' interest. So as we're thinking through them, we have like creating and experiencing. So for example, when we had our 2nd grade students here for our Art and Literacy Day, that kind of falls under that category for that creating and experiencing because we're able to see and do some hands-on stuff with the arts. Cultivating resources really supports our 6th grade program when we have our students go to the Poor Farm and they're doing a lot of that agricultural work there. Dominic also does a lot of work over the summer for our students who do agriculture internship at the Poor Farm. Investing in our future works with our 6th grade BizTown students, and so when they come here to do their BizTown experience and go through all the different businesses, that takes place in there too. For caring for our communities, when we have our Educators Rising, so we have our Grow Our Own Students to Teachers program that supports in there, also with our healthcare program, but really for our 4th grade, Flood Heroes, that falls under that same category too, so it really helps with our elementary students. Building and moving, if you're here just recently before break, we had our 1st graders who are here building their box towns, and so we have that under the umbrella of building and moving, but that also falls with our student-built house that Dom helps support in that process too. And connecting and supporting success are those cross-connecting areas, so this overlaps in all the other areas. So you'll see a lot of that throughout all the experiences we provide for students here. If you have some time in your schedule, in the upcoming months, BizTown is going to be happening right after spring break. We had a first session of BizTown before break. We have the next session coming up after spring break with our students from Southeast. So you're more than welcome to come see them in action as they're exploring their different careers and opportunities there for them. Pathway to Purpose, our first session is next week. We have our students from North Central who will be here next Wednesday, and this is where our high school students get to talk to our 8th graders as they go through the registration process about their goals. This really does help our students create their ICAP, their 4-year plan, as they're thinking through the different opportunities. This year, with the new career clusters framework, we're now encompassing all of those stations. The students will go through multiple stations as they go through their day, and we're now doing it for a full day instead of just a half day. And as they go through those stations, they'll be embedded under those 6 categories that I just mentioned. And so you'll be able to see a lot of information there for students. And then you'll see the ribbon cutting on Thursday for our Junior Achievement Dream Accelerators. So that will be an exciting opportunity for our students. This is where we're hoping to have all of our 9th graders walk away at the end of the year with their industry recognized credential. So this will be one of those main ones that will be really exciting come this week. So that's one that we'll hope that you enjoy too. And then finally, we did, in October, we had a Explore Your Future internship fair for a lot of our students, and they were able to work with our Workplace Learning Center connection that we have with Kirkwood. We are now broadening that up a little bit. So in February, we're going to be working with all of our multilingual students, and we're going to offer an internship fair for our multilingual students so they can come here too and be able to look at different professions that highlight the need for multilingual and bilingual students in those areas. And so they'll be able to do some career exploration, talk with different vendors within our communities, and then also sign up for internships if possible. And then thinking for our exploration paths, we have our 4 highlights. Troy has been doing a lot of work with Brady and with Lucas and myself too around these career academies. And so this is something that we've been really building up for our students to have these opportunities. If you are here, Monday was the first day of class for the students who were able to attend the Patient Care Academy. And so it was really great being downstairs and seeing students in class in this space. And hopefully we can see more students in the future. In the fall, we'll have the students in that pre-nursing with nurse aid certification, and also with education and business. And so those will be the academies we'll be rolling out as of next year. And like I said, a lot of that work is under the umbrella of what Troy is doing and helping us kind of build up here. All right, that is it. If you have any chance, you will have seen right now on social media, Kristen, Executive Director Peterson and her team have been extremely amazing in creating these videos about highlighting our pathways and the courses we have available for our students. And if you want to, you can have that link and it takes you to our YouTube channel. And so you'll be able to see a list of all the videos that have been circulating on social media for our students to have access to that. And so we thank her team for that amazing work. And that is it. Questions?
Great. Thank you so much, directors. Are there questions for the team?
This is a great presentation, and I think overall it's a fantastic addition to what we're offering in terms of public school education in this area. I would like to ask, how is the program designed to accept and respond to students who change their interest in career as they go from 6th grade to 12th grade?
I'll let Troy speak to that.
Okay. Well, students who choose a pathway aren't locked in. So on our website, the pathways give them a great number of opportunities and options for selecting courses and things that they can take. Now, in a given trimester, high school students might be locked into that class after a certain time, but certainly after that trimester, if they feel like, you know, I thought I wanted to go into business, but after taking some classes, I think I'd really like to do health. They can make some changes from that. So I think that's one of the nice things about our program is it allows for a lot of exploration, but it also allows for a lot of flexibility for our students because they're not locking into a specific program.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just want to reiterate that I think it's great what this program is doing. I was just curious if you could give a couple of examples of the types of industry recognized credentials that you're helping students access or have plans to in the future.
Well, that's a great question. So one of our biggest ones that Carmen talked about was our Dream Accelerator. So we worked extensively with Junior Achievement and helped coach them in applying for a industry relevant credential where theirs is called Work Essential Skills, I believe is the correct name for it. And they had 5 industries in Iowa back it. And so all of our 9th graders will take that assessment and potentially earn that. But in our CTE programs, our Student Built House has a credential that's OSHA certified credential. E-food handlers in culinary classes, all the kids learn how to safely handle foods. There's a certification for that for the culinary academies. And our Project Lead the Way classes, all the engineering classes except for the computer science classes. So Principles of Engineering, Introduction to Engineering Design, Civil Engineering Architecture are all tied to companies like Boeing and John Deere backed that credential. So if they score the equivalent of a 3 out of a 5 on the standardized test, they earn a credential there. So, and there's many more. So I can keep going on, but the state does have an approved list. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, CL Biliteracy is another one that we also highlight, which is one that all of our multilingual students who are in world languages and our ELL students have a chance of getting. And they can get the state seal and the global seal, so they can do that internationally too.
I was lucky enough last year to observe the Pathway to Purpose event, and it's just an outstanding event, not just for the 8th graders, but also for the upperclassmen that are presenting. Anybody who didn't make it, Director Horn-Fraser, make a point to go, because it's really a wonderful thing to see. I'm curious, you mentioned you're transitioning to a full day experience, and can you explain what you're adding to that experience to make it into a full day?
So last year we had it to where the students were only here for a half day and they walk through multiple stations for 5 minutes. So now we're giving them more than 5 minutes. They have 20 minutes at each of the different stations, so it's more immersive, it's more interactive for our students. And then we're also working with big ideas. They have, it's a trades, they have like 2 huge semis that come in here, and the students would have chance to go through those different semis and they have explorations around the trades. And so it's a really more interactive and more immersive for our students this year.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? All right. Thank you so much for being with us tonight and for the presentation. Next up is our personal device policy and timeline. I know, so happy.
Thanks, President Malone. Lucas and Brady are going to come to the podium here and walk you guys through through a few slides. But I just wanted to kick it off. I think the last time we had this conversation at the board table, we had gotten some direction from the board that there was interest in continuing to push on what our device restrictions are for our students in our buildings. And so we ran a really successful process last year with direction from the board, feedback from our different stakeholder groups, and then we went through a period of informing folks and educating them to implementation. And so of course, we'd like to replicate as much of that process as possible through this, and then wanted to make sure we were meeting your expectations, or also giving you an opportunity for feedback on what we ask for feedback for, so that we get that in line again with the board's desire on that. You also see a sample timeline in there that they'll kind of walk you through that mirrors a little bit of that same process I talked about from last year. But really wanted to give you guys an opportunity here at the end to make sure you had a chance to share with us what you might like to see in that feedback. So by the time we bring some information back to you, that's informative of your next steps. So.
Thank you,
Hopefully I
Superintendent.
didn't steal your whole presentation.
You stole quite a bit of it. We're done. Questions and comments. Appreciate having Brady back to the podium with me here today. One of the things that I'd like to highlight, which was so effective for the implementation of our policy last year, was the collaboration between teachers and administrators. And we'll highlight what we anticipate that looking like for any revised policy here. So I will turn it over to Brady. He will go over a little bit of the historical pieces, and then we'll get into the timeline.
Yeah, so thanks for having me back at the podium. I would second what Lucas said. The collaboration was outstanding. I think that led to a policy that we were comfortable with, that we could implement with fidelity, that we could train staff around, and that we could review results of. And I think that's really important when you're creating policy, so we're hopeful we'll be able to get to that same sort of outcome. So we will provide a historical overview of what led us to our current policy. We have some new board members, and then a timeline on potential policy changes that you might want to consider, and then also just we would like some guidance from you about what, feedback you would like for us to get. So if you remember, we, as a board, you engaged in a book study on the anxious generation. It was in the summer of 2024. And as an overlay, Lucas and I and others on the team looked at other school districts to see what they were doing, to see what we could model. At that point in time, there were actually not that many school districts who were at least publicly saying they had a new instructional device policy, but we were able to find a couple. You did engage with stakeholders in late September and early October with the survey. That survey I'll talk about a little bit more, but you did have an engagement at that point. That led to your board discussions in October and November. There was an initial desire to have a more restrictive approach. We then came back and said, can we come together with a team from the Iowa City Education Association and the district administrative teams and see how that would be implemented with the time frame that you had in mind. That was a very successful team. The feedback I've received this year about that team was that it was a model team. Even if people maybe who were skeptical of the direction that we were going, they felt that process was very successful. You did vote as a board in November, as you remember, on our current policy. That I did like. This is Lucas too. This is Executive Director Potachik's Inform, Educate, and Implement. I think it's a really good framework for us. It was one that we tried to highlight here in this overview. Historically, that once your vote happened led us to the information phase about what our new policy would be, and led to an education phase with our staff, our families, and our students in December of 2024. We implemented the current policy in January. We began data collection. In that interim, the Iowa legislature took action, which we anticipated them to do with House File 782. Our policy as it exists now meets all of the statutory requirements, so we were fine there. We engaged again in the spring in more surveying of folks, and then did a presentation, as you know, in December. I was not, Lucas didn't invite me to the podium, but I'm here now. So that did lead to your request for a potential policy change. So if we look at, in the fall, just to walk through what your engagement with the community and stakeholders look like. In the fall, that would have been late September, early October, you did a Qualtrics survey to staff, student, and families. That, depending on who the group was, had a variety of questions, some which were more quantitative, asking them to respond by choosing one of 5 different preset options. And then you did also have a qualitative option at the end of all of those surveys, asking the stakeholders if what they felt could be potentially changed about the existing policy that we had at that point in time. So there was more of a policy preference component to that in the fall of 2024. Spring of 2024, you ran 2 surveys, both Qualtrics. The first was to staff, asking them about how it was going. And once we had trained staff around the new policy, we'd implemented it for some a couple of months. We did ask them what student engagement looked like, what the training was like, what fidelity of implementation looked like, what their ability to teach was like after we had implemented the policy. Those were all very, very favorable. You then ask us to engage with students, because I think we got some feedback from students, maybe formally and informally, that their voice wasn't being heard. So we ran a second set of surveys in the spring of 2024, targeted at 2 groups. One was students, asking them really the same questions we asked the staff at the secondary schools. And then also we ran targeted surveys of our support staff to see what training they received and what support that they needed or they wish they would have had, so that we could make changes if needed in this fall. So you've had some different engagement strategies as we've moved through this that we want to do, just to sort of, because of the requests we're going to make.
So when we take a look at the potential for a separate policy looking at a more restrictive ban from bell to bell that was discussed in the December board meeting, this would be the timeline based on what we did for the previous policy that we would recommend for a successful rollout, as well as to engage stakeholders, which includes students, staff, and families as well. So looking at January as an additional board presentation, additional discussion and guidance to kind of give us the go-ahead to move forward, and then looking at February and March for those stakeholder surveys. And one of the things that we're going to ask for after this slide is what is that feedback that you'd like to hear from each of those stakeholder groups. We went through and reviewed some of those questions earlier today from the previous surveys, and if we want to state something similar, or if there's additional feedback that you would all like for the board, certainly open to what that could look like. Looking then at March 2026, the presentation to the board about the policy decision moving forward after looking at that stakeholder feedback. Then we take a look at informing and educating. One of the things, again, that we highlighted was the collaboration. That committee was mainly made up of teachers and administrators. We know that any additional policy change would require us involving more staff members that would be directly impacted by any type of policy change. And we've discussed what those work groups could look like. That would include our engagement intervention specialists, our hallway supervisors, people that would be directly impacted with any type of policy change. They would be the people at the front lines. So we want to make sure to engage them as part of that conversation as well, again, because they will be some of our immediate responders when any type of violation occurs to our policy. April and June is, again, that inform and educate piece that we found very beneficial for a successful rollout last year. And then lastly, beginning of the August 26-27 school year is our full implementation. So that's what we would recommend for any type of policy change as far as a timeline. We do know that any type of change, even though we're successful with this partial ban for our current policy, we know that any large change does have some type of disruption to the school year that has been communicated to us by administrators. Again, not that it's impossible, but that's one of those things that has been communicated with any type of broader scale policy change. So one of the things that we would look forward from your end as we go through the timeline is what is that feedback that you'd like, and who do you want to get it from? So, we're open to suggestions from you. Brady and I will be up here, certainly answer any questions, but we'd love discussion from your end about what you'd like to hear and see from any type of surveys.
Dive in, directors.
Well, thank you very much for this presentation and for all the work you've done on this. I guess I'm very interested in looking at high school. I mean, that's what I know best, so that's what I'm thinking about. And how do staff feel about the current policy and what it has done to reduce distraction? Has the current policy helped? I want to ask them again now because we've had it for a while. I know we asked them shortly after we've looked at infractions, but we've all gotten a couple emails recently about reasons why the current high school policy makes sense for high school. And so I guess I want to know how broad that feeling is about the current policy working for high school.
And when I think back to the question that was asked, we asked about engagement within the classroom, and then we also asked about the amount of instructional time lost and their ability to teach the subject. So those are all questions that I can recollect off the top of my head that we asked staff regarding those such topics.
Am I correct? First of all, Brady, it's so good to see you back up at the podium.
Thank you, Director Williams.
Would not ever want to leave you out of this conversation. I know how much you enjoy it. Do we require, when students go out on a pass in the middle of a class, do they have to get an electronic pass? Like, do they have to sign out? And then do we keep data on that?
We have some of our buildings that use what's called eHall Pass as one option. There's also a system through Infinite Campus that has the same type of thing. There's a Smart Pass, so we've got a couple different systems. It can be used through the Chromebook. So students would submit in there, I want to pass the bathroom, but there's all that data that's collected as a result of that because there's parameters that teachers and administrators can put on who can be in the hallway at the same time, but yes.
Did we use that system prior to our cell phone change?
Yeah, there's some of our buildings that have been using that for 3 years, maybe more.
I might be a little bit interested to see if the cell phone policy impacted the amount of passes that students were requesting. The idea being if you can't use it in the classroom, are you just saying I have to go to the bathroom and then leaving the classroom to go to the bathroom to use your phone? And maybe you'll say at the end of the day the data isn't strong enough. We can't draw any conclusions from it, but if we could, I'd be interested in seeing.
It's always one of those pieces that high schoolers don't necessarily like is that eHall or the Smart Pass. That's one of the first
when the
things
screen turns red too, right? When they're doing
So
absolutely.
Brady, is it common practice that everyone uses that policy, or do teachers still just say, yes, go to the bathroom?
I think it varies, and I think different schools have chosen to do different things based on their experiences that they've had. So we'll try to, that would be something we could try to just pull some data without doing a survey to take a look at. But it is interesting, But But it does vary. I mean, yeah, some teachers just, you have laminated passes, you say, it's really fast, take the laminated pass, go, they come back, it's not an issue, you know.
I have a, maybe an observation and then probably some questions. So thank you, first of all, for all this background. It's very helpful to the newbie. But the thing that occurs to me as I'm thinking through a lot of the questions that we're raising and I think are on people's minds is that, we have been receiving feedback, community feedback related to not just cell phone policy, but just device use in general. And I think that it might be a pretty inefficient and maybe even frustrating process to kind of just go after one piece at a time if we aren't kind of looking at really what's the big picture of the outcome we want for all of this. Like we want to maximize academic achievement, we want to maximize student engagement, we want to maximize community building and connection like in real life, and technology keeps changing. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if there is something that we could or should be thinking about to create an environment in which we can have just ongoing conversations as the developments take place so that we don't have to keep frustrating people with like, oh, but now we want to change it this way. Or, Brady, you just mentioned that the model that was used to arrive at the last policy was viewed very positively, and I'd love to kind of keep that goodwill going and keep the perspectives, keep our access to the wide range of perspectives so that we can come up with the best solutions. And so I am wondering what we might be able to do to establish and just kind of foster that ongoing conversation so that policies can be adjusted as needed, so that we can be sure we're responding to what's actually happening in the classroom and what the community concerns are. And so that's the one big thing I'm thinking about. And then very sort of tactically, I'm thinking about the fact that we have a very important large-scale survey with the Hanover work that's planned and gonna happen. Yeah. And to have another survey about a hot-button topic like this competing for attention and time might compromise one or the other. And so I'm thinking, I don't have an answer, but I'm just thinking that we might need to kind of think through how that all works. And I know that there are people who are very concerned about responding quickly to the concerns, but I also know that there's a big range of opinions on this and a lot of ramifications in the buildings, and so on. So,
thank you.
Gonna piggy off of Director Horn-Fraser's comment, because after the way that everything just works together after the last meeting, we were talking about cell phones in the high school and Chromebooks and other devices. I thought to myself, okay, students can hotspot with their cell phones, right? And then I'm like, oh, I'm a genius here because that if they're hotspotting, then they're using their Chromebook, and then they are getting on their Chromebook and they are passing the filters that the high school has. So then they're using their at-home filter, right? So whatever their parents have set up for them. So if their parents have said, you can get on TikTok through the computer or whatever it may be, or get on Facebook or X, or then they can get on it. I took it a step forward, and then I thought, just bring your own computer and hotspot it. So I've brought it to these teachers that I was meeting with, just hanging out with, and they're just like, duh, yeah, that goes on. Why did you think you were so smart? And I'm like, okay. But it's the way that these things and policies do work with one another, and they work in hand with one another. And I don't know the easy answer here on that, but it's, if students are bringing their cell phones and they're hotspotting, but we are expecting to somehow mitigate connection to whatever websites we do not want them on during the school day, the cell phone is there and providing them access to that. I mean, you brought up the funny glasses, the smart glasses. Sorry, I call them funny glasses. God, I'm making myself look old or sound old here. But, you know, bringing the smart glasses, that's something that just went over my head. But do you want students walking around recording everything that's going on during their school day? I don't know if I would. And so, yeah, just to piggyback off of Director Horn-Fraser, that a lot of these things do work in tandem, and how we envision the school day, how parents envision the school day for their children is something that I also reflect on. There's one thing that we still have not gotten feedback on, and I've asked for it, and I don't know what the step is, where we're at on it in the tech, and even our technology community committee, is having people from Stead Children's Hospital on these committees. What do the pediatricians and family medicine doctors that treat our students daily have to say about this? What are the psychiatrists? What are the psychologists at the university? Are the mental health therapists that actually work with our students, that see this day in and day out, receive the feedback from the parents, receive the feedback from the students? Because I hear from them personally, but I don't understand why we have not gotten feedback from them on this when they are the ones that are actively saying, hold the brakes on cell phones, hold the brakes on technology, because we're not seeing great things out of it in our clinics. So, anyway.
Yeah, I do think we need to kind of look at this in a more comprehensive way, not just siloed into the cell phone discussion. We've got the Chromebooks, we've got the personal laptops. I think just technology in general, I think there's a big question mark for us and a lot of our parents about how much our students are being exposed to. And, you know, to add on to Director Horn-Fraser's point, you know, as information comes out and evolves, our values are changing, or, you know, are constantly changing, and the way that we view this and how we want to approach it. I also would like us to not look at a one-size-fits-all approach, because our sixth graders are a lot different than our seniors. And there's a lot of developmental differences between those two age groups. And so to add on to Dr. Abraham. Vice President Abraham and Vice Principal. What was my point? Oh, I would like some feedback from our middle school administrators and educators, because I'm not necessarily certain that we want to do the same approach with both our middle and high schoolers. And, you know, we think about that book that we all read last summer, and one of the recommendations was no cell phone until high school. So, you know, if we are truly partnering with our parents who want to limit that for their children, then, you know, having a ban at middle school is something that that supports that and supports our parents in doing that. So I'd kind of like to look at middle school and high school maybe perhaps in a you know, in two different lights.
Just one more comment. I agree that technology is a huge issue, and there's all, you know, Chromebooks, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get all bogged down though in what a huge issue this is, and do we need to start looking at exactly how many minutes people are using Chromebooks, et cetera, and not do anything about cell phones, which every kid carries around in their pocket. So I just don't want to lose the cell phone issue in the forest, or that's not the right analogy, but you know what I mean?
You might want to. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Director Abraham. I think we have some good momentum here, right, around cell phones in particular, and I do appreciate the comments from the directors about, you know, big picture and screen time concerns, because I think that's one we've all heard frequently, right? We hear concerns in different ways, shapes, and forms from that. And so, you know, I think something we probably need to consider is, you know, how do we keep moving on this track in regards to cell phones. But then to Director Horn Fraser's point, you know, what are some overarching philosophies or goals we want to accomplish, right, just in regards to tech and screens? And then how does that inform some larger conversations in regards to, you know, things that Director Lingo was talking about with Chromebooks and what we know from the medical community? And then how do we, you know, navigate working through change on there? We made some good steps last year. Yes, we approved a large Chromebook purchase, but you also put some just physical limitations in access to those elementary devices, right, that now are in carts and stay at school rather than going home. So I think while we make small iterative changes in areas we know are important to us, there's also room for that big picture conversation about what do we want instruction to look like, what do we want necessary access and still accomplishing our goals around digital literacy while also not tipping to the point where it starts to feed in and foster those concerns that, you know, I think we are hearing. Director Finch, I think, did a nice job too about changing, like, we're in a time where expectations seem to be changing back, right? You know, and we're kind of shifting our view from the families we're serving in regards to some of that. And so I think trying to find that right balance is just going to be an ongoing conversation for us. But after we've been receiving some of that feedback, you guys have gotten a message from me knowing that, you know, we do have to look at that in a larger scale and find a pathway forward in that. And so I think that would be a good opportunity for us to follow up. But, you know, for tonight, what we really wanted to make sure is if we were going to get some feedback, that we were in line with any questions you wanted answered and that we design whatever that feedback looks like in an appropriate way. And then maybe we come back as a separate topic around some of this bigger picture conversation, if that sounds amenable to you guys.
Did you have something, Director Eastham?
Yeah, just in terms of answering the question, who do we want to get feedback from? I think I'm mostly interested in getting feedback from the teaching staff. That includes administrators in the building too. Both about what they think about the educational advantage or the academic, the teaching advantage of not having cell phones present in the classroom, and what they think that, or I guess I should better say, what does the teaching staff think about the effect of cell phone use by pre-K through 12 students, what it actually is? And I think Director Lingo was suggesting that we don't clearly understand what is happening to students who use cell phones a lot. It may not be as the effect may not be as great as you know, some people are trying to convince us that it's that it has a great effect. So let's try to understand that. I think the idea of trying to get information about cell phone use effects from pediatricians, it's great. It's a great possibility. So that, and then feedback on, I think again the major area that we need to look at is both the impact on instructional time as well as the overall impact on the students' development as they go through their pre-K through 12 years. But I guess I'm also thinking that we definitely have to take some kind of action here. We're not pleasing enough people, it looks like to me anyway, to satisfy our obligations to try to figure out what the community as a whole wants and to respond to that.
Yeah, I would just agree with Director Eastham. I am really want to make sure that we allow for opportunity to get feedback from our staff, especially since they will be the ones on the front line. And how do they view bell-to-bell policy impacting their relationships and relationship building with the students that they will have to enforce the policy with. And I know we sent surveys to our K through 6, did we do, I can't remember, K through 6 families? I mean, sorry, K through 5 elementary school.
This just went to 612, I believe, right?
I would be interested in learning what our K through 5, fifth grade students, how many of them are actually carrying cell phones. For me, I think it's a lot easier to train younger students versus coming to a senior and all of a sudden, or a junior that's now a senior, saying, oh yeah, no more cell phone, where this kid went from K through maybe 11th grade having access to one, and then creating even more issues in that building. So I would just be interested in knowing how many of our students are taking cell phones to school from K through 5th, even though our policy says none. But that's just, we know it's happening. I mean, I see it in buildings. Their students have cell phones. So I think that would be important to know, because the implementation, like Director Finch said, can look very different for elementary school kids, because they might be an easier generation to train or get to follow our policies versus creating these fights or disagreements with our staff and students at the high school level. Any other comments, or do you all have what you need from us?
I think so. I think we get something started.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next up, we'll take it to our discussion item for tonight, which is ICE protocol. Director Degner, Superintendent, I just downgraded your job. I am so sorry. Okay. Superintendent Degner.
Yeah, thank you, President Malone. So tonight we wanted to revisit our ICE protocols with you. We'd had quite a bit of engagement from the community about a potential resolution for the board to adopt. That is not on the agenda this evening. What we instead wanted to focus on was probably ensuring that some of the elements of that agenda that would have been relevant to the school district, we wanted to remind the community of our protocols and how they're in line with many of those things that are being asked for in the resolution that went to many of our municipalities. And so Deputy Superintendent Ramey is going to revisit some of those with you, talk about any slight adjustments we might have made from the first time we delivered this presentation. I think this is our third time coming back to you to talk to you about our approach in this area, and then answer any questions that you may have.
Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent Degner. And as Matt said, we've had this conversation with you a couple of different times, and so I might move through it pretty quickly, but again, just want to have that discussion and answer any questions. And we met with our admin again today to go over these protocols again. And what we've shared in the past, and we continue to share, is that if we would have an ICE agent, or really any law enforcement agent, show up at one of our buildings, there's some things that we ask them to do, and it's to meet the officer at the door. If it's a staff member, not the administrator, to have the staff member contact administration immediately so they can come and lead that interaction. Ask to see the officer's credential, their badge, ID, and then a warrant or subpoena or official documentation that asks them or explains why they are at the building that day. And again, we have a very respectful relationship with our local law enforcement, and so these are practices that our administrators are already used to in working with local law enforcement authority when they would come to our buildings. Ask the officers to wait outside while our administrators communicate with the ESC. We want to make sure that while our principals are there on the scene, that they are in communication with us, so we can help them navigate that to get legal counsel or advice if that is needed throughout the process when that interaction is taking place. Have them send us the documentation that the officers have provided, so that again, that we can be in that conversation with them. And then on our end, after we do that, to communicate with legal if necessary, provide them guidance for that interaction as they work with ICE agents or law enforcement. If the officers do not provide a subpoena or a warrant, we've told our administrators they can tell them no, that they are not going to abide by that request. And again, that's a practice that not only our administrators are used to, but our partners in local law enforcement understand that we are going to ask them for documentation if they are looking to speak with somebody or wanting information from us in those types of interactions. We have told them that they can ask and they should ask for that documentation, and to tell them no, that they cannot grant them access if they do not present it. But at the same time, we want to keep our people safe, and so we've also told them that if the officers are I'm losing my words. I'm sorry. Adamant. Thank you, President Malone. Adamant that they are going to conduct a search. That we're not going to tell them to put themselves in harm's way in doing that. But again, I think we reiterate that we've been very clear with our administration that they should meet them at the door. They should have them stay outside as we conduct our internal review. Ask them for their credentials, their badge, their ID. Ask them for their official documents that would bring them onto campus, and then check with us here at Central Office so that we can provide them guidance in terms of next steps, how that process would play out.
Questions?
So you mentioned several times, you said ICE agents and law enforcement. So is this now the policy if, say, a school calls the police to come, or, I mean, do Iowa City or Coralville Police or North Liberty have to provide written documentation about why they're coming in?
I mean, that's actually been our practice, Director Abraham, is that we do ask them for documentation that shows why they need to be there. We want to protect our students, to protect our staff in those circumstances. Obviously, we have a respectful relationship with our partners. We've developed good relationships, and so we're able to have those conversations with our local law enforcement as we work through some of those pieces. But I just bring that up to reiterate that it's not new. That it's not something that has not been on the radar of our administrators or practices that we've had in place in terms of trying to have some protocols. Like we have protocols for a lot of things in our buildings, that we can provide that consistent approach when we're dealing with law enforcement when they would come to our buildings.
Thank you, Chase, for the very enlightening explanation of where we are in terms of our policies and at this moment in time. And I just want to say that in my view, we're discussing this because the federal government is not complying with the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution in terms of immigration enforcement. It turns out that I took an oath of office before I became a member of this school board that said that I will comply with the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States and all the other provisions of that Constitution. So I and I think most of us are in the position of making the federal government do something that it's not doing. And it's not doing it, and that's potentially harmful to students in this district. I'm also aware that with conversations, through conversations with the superintendent and President Malone, that there are board members that have conflicts of interest in this matter, which may make it impossible for us to have a quorum to act on any proposed motion in terms of a resolution or other consideration. So I recognize that, and I think it's possible that we will not be able to proceed in terms of considering a resolution because of the conflicts that individual members of the board are under. I just want to be clear to the public that if we're not proceeding, it is because of conflict of interest provisions.
Quick question, Director Rank. What happens if the principal isn't like in-house in the building? Who's then the next person that deals with that?
Sure, they have designees in
Okay.
their building, both in their building, then also an admin designee from another building that their staff can contact. Beyond just the principal, they have contact information for folks here at this building, myself, Eliza, Lucas, superintendent, so that we can be there to provide support that's needed.
And since we all know that the principal or admin aren't the ones viewing like the safety doorbell, that staff is aware on the protocol on how to handle whoever they see, ICE, local government officials, police officers.
Yes, we've talked to the admin about having those conversations with their front office staff. It's probably a good reminder, President Malone, that we should remind the principals to revisit that. But yes, that is our expectation, that they're working with their front office staff, so everyone that needs to know does know.
Great, thank you. Any additional, Director Williams?
Thanks. I'm just going to take a moment every time we talk about this. I'm going to say it so that it's clear. I'm an employee of the executive branch, and as such, I am covered by the standards of ethical conduct for employees of the executive branch. And the views expressed by the directors regarding this topic are not my own, because I take no position on this topic. I am recusing myself from all discussions related to our ICE protocol at our schools and any type of resolutions related to those.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you so much. That takes us to our action items tonight, and the first one is to appoint Board Treasurer Kurt Pratt and administer the oath of office. Is there a motion?
I move we appoint Kurt Pratt as the board treasurer.
Second.
All right, Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, and Board Secretary will administer the oath. Kurt, you want to stand for us? There we go. Make everybody stand.
Make it official. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of Board Treasurer in the Iowa City Community School District as now or hereafter required by law?
I do. All right, thank you. Yay. Next up is a motion for the modified supplemental amount application of dropout prevention. Before I call for the motion, whoever makes the motion, please read it as written. That's why it's coming back to us, because there were some concerns about the last time. So whoever makes the motion, please read it as it's listed on the agenda. Is there a motion?
I motion to approve the request to the SBRC for MSA for the at-risk dropout program. Motion to approve the request to the School Budget Review Committee, SBRC, for the modified supplemental amount, MSA, in the amount of $7,656,551 for the 2026-2027 at-risk dropout plan.
Second.
All right. Only question I have, Board Secretary, is that good? Okay,
Read it in its entirety. So.
great.
And was
We're
the
ready to
second
vote.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Thank you. Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. And the final action item is for the Interstate Light and Power Company real property easement. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. And next up is our upcoming events and community updates. The first one is legislative updates and upcoming forums. Superintendent Degner, did you want to start us off?
You bet. So tonight while we've been meeting, the governor's delivering her State of the State address. Been just trying to glance at my phone here in the last couple minutes to see what the team has texted about what's been in there. But it looks like there is maybe a 2% increase suggested for SSA in her budget proposal. When I looked on my computer from the text of the speech, I didn't necessarily see that she mentioned that out loud. It does look like there's an impact point about providing extracurricular and dual credit opportunities to the public district. The reason I bring that one up is I think it's an important advocacy point for us, as they want to continue to have public districts provide these opportunities to students that have taken vouchers to attend elsewhere. We also need to advocate for the same rules and regulations to apply to those private schools that are recipients of vouchers, or charters that are recipients of vouchers, that there's two different standards of rules and compliance we're asked to follow. And so certainly want kids to have opportunities. Nobody's talking about that, but I think if we want things to be similar that way, that's an important advocacy point for us to make, because there's a hefty amount of accountability that we're asked to do from the state, and that's continually increasing. I think there'll be other important things for us to pay attention to this legislative session. There could be some student behavior legislation. We continue to monitor any legislation around social issues that comes. I didn't see any of that necessarily in the speech this time. But I think that adequate and timely funding is just one that we have to constantly come back to. There's some news about educators asking for the skies, and somehow we've all of a sudden defined 5% as asking for the skies, which seems very unfortunate. We talked a little bit in our committee meeting beforehand that when we look at some of the academic outcomes from the state and look at the investment they made into our public schools, I think you probably see some correlation to that. There was some reference to achievement rates here this evening in the governor's speech, and I also don't think it's probably surprising as an institution we're seeing a rebounding in some achievement rates after the pandemic, and that some of those increases are coming. So I don't know that that's necessarily from the policies that have been put forth. So we have a lot of work to do, I think, ahead in this session. There's going to be a huge talking point about property taxes, and it sounds likely that the legislature will do something in regards to property taxes, and so we'll, of course, want to monitor how that impacts either our levels of funding or our ability to spend in different areas, and then work with our municipal partners about how that could change things here in the local community, too. So that's what I could tell you from an overview perspective. We have our first forum. I think the date is Is it the 30th, guys?
Yes,
that we have
30th.
emailed out to our local Johnson County legislators, along with the other school districts that are in Johnson County. So we'll look forward to hosting you all here in the boardroom on the 30th for that first legislative session with our reps.
And as President Shuck mentioned, League of Women Voters will have their education forum on January 24th. They do ask for board representation, and if there's a question that we want to pose to them, who will be able to attend. I unfortunately cannot attend that morning, so I don't know if any other directors will be there, and if they're willing to take suggestions from, questions from other board members.
What was the date again?
January 24th. That's a Saturday. And it's going to be at the Iowa City Senior Center, starting at 9:30. And last year it was really warm in that room. So it will be warm. So
Well, I could attend. I'm not sure I would be the best person to ask questions. And
I think last year Brady and I tag team, maybe?
Yeah, President Malone, we did tag team. My suggestion, as it was last year, would be to take your legislative priorities and have, 2 or 3 questions based on those.
Great.
As one of the co-sponsors, you'll have a chance, like ICEA will, to speak early on in the question session, but there are other co-sponsors, so you want to have like a backup. But, Director Eastham, I'd be happy to, tag team with you. I'll be there. So we could sort of see what other people were asking, think about the legislative priorities of the board, have some things ready, and then adjust if needed on the fly.
Well, I would be so honored to have you.
All right.
What-
I like that
it-
idea.
Yeah, well, great.
All right. Great. Next up is the Director Liaison Report. I don't know if directors have any items that they would like to highlight. Okay. Hearing none, I'll move on to agenda setting. We have an education meeting on the 20th. It will be here? Yes. Okay. Somebody say yes. And
Yes.
we will be talking about professional development. Great. And then there will be a policy and governance meeting on the 27th, starting at 5 or 5:30.
I think we could probably do 5:30.
5:30,
I did
okay.
just get today a bunch of policy primers from IASB. Not that many, I guess. It's probably eight or 9. So
Okay, but still 5:30 should
I
work.
think so.
We'll
And-
try for 5:30. If we need to change, we'll ask you. Is that
Okay. But they'll, in addition to the policy primers, it will be the 500 series policies focusing on students.
Yep.
And then that takes us to our second monthly meeting. We have our education showcase. Do you know who that is yet?
Garner Elementary.
Garner, great.
It's gonna be a great one.
Okay. The Grantwood AEA Awards presentation, what is that?
The AEA has got some recognition to administer to our school buildings for some of their achievement results, and so they wanted to come do that in a public fashion and do that in front of you guys.
Great. And right now, we do not have discussion items or presentations, but Superintendent Degner does have our parking lot, so.
Yeah, so there's a few things. One, I'm thinking about the conversation from tonight, and I don't know that we'll be ready for the 27th, but I do wonder if there's even just a way to revisit the discussion. And so we kind of keep that topic moving around screen time in general and wondering what our goals are and some direction there. So I'd like to keep that one in the hopper for a potential conversation on the 27th. We'd like to provide a unified sports update to you at some point. Tunisia's been doing a great job in that area for us, and we've got some positions out there we've selected some people for, so I think that could be a positive one for us to share. So we'll see if we can make that happen. And those were kind of the two big ones I had in the parking lot for our next meeting that we could potentially come back to.
When, I'm trying to remember, is it usually the February meetings that we go through building level enrollment and class sizes?
We would have already received a class size update. Are you thinking more staffing, Director Lingo?
In the past, we usually get the class size update and building level enrollment.
Yeah, that should be in the next month or two.
Okay,
Yeah,
next month.
yeah, class size enrollment report, right? That would be February, right? Yes, yeah.
Any other items directors want to make sure we still have in a parking lot or suggest to see for next meeting or conversation for?
Just further conversation of the future on technology.
Yeah, that's the one I was
That's
kind of
what he
referencing
said.
at the beginning. Yep.
All right. Just a reminder, we have an exempt session after this. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Get home safe.